Hey, welcome to The Long Game. We're on a mission to demystify the science that shapes our lives and to unpack how great ideas, built here in Scotland, become real-world medicines, devices, and new companies at the cutting edge of life sciences.
And Ross, because we share a passion for golf as well as science, we know progress is a game of patience. No hype, just the long game.
Well, hey everybody, I'm Ross Kagan, Regis Professor of Precision Medicine at the University of Glasgow.
And I'm Sandy Weir, Tech Innovation Leader and Strategic Program Manager, joining from Edinburgh.
Hey Sandy, it's lovely to see you again. It's been, 2 days?
2 days.
Since we saw each other? Might want to catch up our audience on our Sunday.
We've dried out a lot since Sunday, which is a good thing because we had the pleasure of playing golf down in Aberdour, which is a beautiful course. I really recommend it to people.
So
excellent golf course. But we had every sort of weather possible in 4 hours. Torrential rain, beautiful sunshine, more torrential rain, hailstones, and then to cap it all off, Ross, what did we get?
We got what I thought was not possible in Scotland, because I've not seen one yet, a thunderstorm.
Thunder and lightning, yeah.
Yeah, thunder and lightning, and as a bonus, instead of rain, we got hail.
Yeah.
How does that work out? And the funny thing is, do you remember about halfway into this, we actually thought, oh, the weather's amazing. It's all cleared up now, and it's going beautiful, and we were shedding layers. And
my woolly hat came off. Yeah,
I know, exactly. They had to send a guy out with one of those horns where he hits the button and just to tell everybody you got to get off the course now because you're all holding little lightning rods.
It was crazy. The only good thing,
the
blessing, Ross, was that none of us were on to a course record as we had to abandon the 16th green. If we'd been on a course record.
Oh, you mean a low course record?
Exactly.
You mean for the lowest score?
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Just clarifying.
Yeah. No, it was a ton of fun. It was a lovely place. And but you know, there's so many lovely golf courses out there. We just got to keep exploring, I think. That's just one of many. I look forward to going back, but you know, there's just too many to focus all our energy in one place. We'll find another one soon.
It's true. Yeah, no, I would love to go back there someday. We'll take a pause, but I think just for the PTSD of the 17th hole, I'd like to go back there and remind myself how beautiful the game is.
Indeed. Just before we move off this point, Ross, I just want to remind you,
Sure.
At one point you said my driving was metronomic on and I'm taking that. I'm owning that. So that I was
Your driving was brilliant on Sunday.
I was so pleased. I seemed to be able
God.
to put it anywhere I wanted, but that was good. But I think if we combine the best parts of both of our games on Sunday, I think we would have been pretty hard to beat. We were pretty good across the game, actually. Yeah,
I would agree with that. I think I did all right with the irons. And really, honestly, dude, if you can't brag up on your own podcast.
Exactly. That's so true. Yeah, and your Timo irons that you mentioned earlier, they were excellent as well.
Oh, yeah, that's right. They really, right?
Yeah, they were.
Flipping things out of the bunkers, no problem. So on the long game, we explore the collision of cells, code, and capital in the Scottish life sciences sector. This is a weird transition. Today we are talking about an asset that is invisible, but is arguably the most valuable resource that Scotland possesses. More valuable than the whiskey in casks, potentially more valuable than the oil left in the North Sea. And I know that sounds unlikely, but what are we talking about, Sandy?
Yeah, it seems, and given everything that's going on in the world, it seems a bit strange to be talking about oil. But anyway, we're talking about our health data, of course. That digital footprint, every cough, every prescription, every scan, MR, CT, the very genetic quirks that we have. It's all about our health data.
Yeah. Now, the premise of today's episode is a question that is dominating actually the boardrooms and the Parliament right now, as I understand it. Is Scotland's patient data the new oil? And if it is, who gets to drill for it?
It's a massive topic. From my side of the fence in the tech industry, data really is our raw material. We use it to build our AI applications. We use it to develop the workflow and productivity, improving smarts, the diagnostic insights that we get from our next generation of AI models. It's all created and all depends on that access to that data. But Ross, nobody knows more than me the reactions that we see from members of the public. Sometimes when we see people get very nervous when they hear the words private tech company and NHS medical records in the same sentence.
Yeah, I know. And, we're going to probably talk a lot more about this over the podcast because you and I have discussed this in some detail. And I'm not sure that people feel the way that the perceptions are gained, but we'll talk about that. So today I'm going to share a surprising and kind of mind-blowing secret about an archive of DNA that Scotland has been keeping since 1965, which is almost to the point when I was born. Then Sandy explained to us how companies actually use this data and how the Scottish government is trying to monetize it in 2026 while keeping the public's trust. So, sausage rolls down. Yeah, I'm looking at you, Sandy. I don't know why I'm saying that. I just ate a sausage roll. And let's get into it.
Yeah, so Ross, you're going to set the scene for us. So, why is Scottish data suddenly the hot topic for global tech companies? What's bringing them here, and why don't they just buy the data from the US or even just work with a greater scale of data that's available in NHS England, for example?
Yeah, of course. So I actually do know something about this because I've come across it, of course, when I was in the US. So a couple reasons. First of all, basically stability and this magical chi number. Chai number?
Kai.
I always say chi, yeah. This is a number that every Scottish citizen receives at birth. It's the Community Health Index, and that connects us to the NHS. And in fact, when my wife Yumi and I moved here, before we arrived here, we paid into that system so that we could take advantage of it. And it was, one of the things that brought us here. I love it.
Yeah.
Anyway, in America, the health system is not like that. It's a big fragmented mess. And I'm sure everybody's heard something about the American health system, but I got to see it up front and personal when I was running a clinical trial and just getting patient records from patients that were not in our system at Mount Sinai turned out to be a real problem. So anyway, when you change jobs in the States, you change insurance, your medical records get fractured into pieces. It was only recently that you even could get it online. I remember actually having to go, we're talking about 7-8 years ago, having to go to a desk, get my physical records, and then go over to another hospital with my records in hand, which is pretty bananas. So in Scotland, we have a stable population, so they don't move around as much as they do in the States, which is helpful, and a completely centralized NHS, and we have that magical chi number, all of us.
Yeah. So Ross, so this is really important, and we mentioned it in a previous pod. It's that 10-digit number that's on every hospital letter that comes through the letterbox, right?
Yeah, to me, that's what's so magical about this because it links everything. It creates basically what, as a researcher, I like to call cradle-to-grave patient record, which I cannot emphasize is super, super valuable. And again, in our podcast going forward, we'll be talking more about this. The idea that we can actually track a patient's health story from the day they're born to the day they die. We're talking about primary care, hospitals, pharmacies. For a cancer researcher like me, who's always looking for patterns and trying to understand, relate them to treatments, this longitudinal data is absolutely goldmine. And I think pharmaceutical companies very much feel the same way.
Yeah, but wait, it's not just the digital records, is it? You mentioned a very special archive earlier. Do you want to expand?
So, yeah. And we came across this, I guess I came across this when we were together at the Living Lab and I first learned about this. This is sort of a physical manifestation of this cradle to grave. If you were born in Scotland after 1965, the government has a piece of your DNA in a vault.
That sounds incredible. You got to tell us more about this.
Yeah, it's called the Guthrie Card Archive. And so a few days after a baby is born, and probably many parents will remember this, a midwife does a little heel prick to test for rare genetic conditions, and they take 4 drops of the baby's blood onto a piece of cardboard called a Guthrie card. What most people don't know is that Scotland keeps them. We have an archive of over 2.5 million of these cards, as I've gotten to hear quite a bit about them. It's the largest, longest standing collection of dried newborn blood spots in the world.
Yeah, and actually, I have to confess, I do know a little bit about this. Remember,
I know.
I did work in the NHS once upon a time. So that Guthrie card archive, it's actually stored in a secure vault within the Scottish Newborn Screening Laboratory, which is situated in maybe a bit too much detail for everyone. I hope I'm not giving away too many secrets. It's situated in the laboratory medicine building in the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital in Glasgow. And sure enough, you're absolutely right, Ross. They have blood spots from almost every working age adult in Scotland. But the big question is, how can researchers actually use that data?
Yeah. So answering that question, of course, will take more than just one podcast. And like I said, I'm sure we'll dig deeper into it. I mean, until recently, there was actually a moratorium on doing anything with it. But recently, the Generation Scotland project did a feasibility study. They took the Guthrie cards that were up to 38 years old. They took out a bit of the DNA. They successfully matched genetic markers to the adult health systems of those same babies. Basically, the punchline is they could show that these things were preserved really well. They could even look at what are called epigenetic markers, which is basically the chemistry that your body puts onto its DNA, little markers. Can see if the mom smoked during pregnancy, all sorts of crazy stuff.
Yeah, it's just incredible.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely incredible, Ross. But as a citizen, and as guess as one of these babies that has had my heel pricked in the past, it does feel a little bit dystopian.
Yeah, and so I feel like in some ways the way we're introducing this makes it feel a bit of drama to that, and there is an ethical tightrope. And I have to say, Scotland until now has really fallen on the, let's put up a wall tightrope. So actually, Scotland has been doing the right thing because just a little side thing. You and I have discussed this quite a bit. When people are asked if they would share their data de-identified, so nobody gets to know who the data is from, and you have, let's say you're in for a cancer, you have a tumor, or they take a biopsy out and they ask you, can we use this for research? Can we share this with companies to develop drugs? My experience is that almost everybody says yes, because when you have something bad happening to you or scary happening to you, you like to think that you're able to help others. But of course, there's an element of trust built into all of this. You really don't want people running around showing your data with your name. So this cannot happen. I just want to be super clear on this. So anyway, so Scotland, knowing all of this, ran what they call it a citizens' jury to gain public opinion. And as I said, not surprisingly, the public basically said, sure, you can use our blood spots for health research as long as you keep strict ethical oversight. And we always have the option to opt out, which everybody always does. Basically, people want to cure diseases. They just don't want their data sold to the highest bidder. They want it to make sure that if you're going to use this to build a biomed economy, it has to be done responsibly. It has to be done with the idea that at the end of this road, it's not just people making money, it is people getting better, it's new treatments. Basically, it's cool to build a biotech economy as long as it's done responsibly and done for the benefit of the Scottish people. And this, of course, takes us to the business side of it, because as a scientist, I'm always going to be like, yeah, let's get more data and let's run amok with it. So how does a company actually get access to this?
Yeah, and this is where the landscape is really radically shifting right now in 2026. And the government realizes that they're sitting on a collection of resources that could not only revolutionize healthcare in this country, but also bring massive investment to the Scottish economy.
Yeah, but I'm going to assume that you can't just pop a spreadsheet in an envelope and ship it off to a biotech startup. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely no. And this is where organizations like Research Data Scotland or RDS come in. They're an independent charity. They were set up by the government. Their entire focus as part of their 2025-2026 business plan, it's all about unlocking Scotland's data and maintaining public trust. So we also have in Scotland, as part of this engagement, the safe havens and trusted research environments. You might remember, Ross, I mentioned the amazing Scottish Safe Haven network in one of our previous discussions, right?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm still a bit on the learning curve on this. From a work in the living lab as a basic researcher now learning about all this. So explain what a safe haven is to us lay people.
Yeah, sure. And again, we're not going to cover all of this in detail today, but if I start off and the safe havens are kind of synonymous with trusted research environments now. So if you imagine highly secure virtual digital reading room, if a company, say my own company, kind of medical or an AI startup, wants to train an AI algorithm, say to detect lung cancer, for example, I wonder who could be working on that in collaboration, Ross. Yeah, that's our living lab focus, of course. So just to give you an example, they get down to the NHS and they actually access the data in a secure way. So they don't just use their laptop to get access to that data. They need to work with the data under strict access arrangements and really tight governance, really to make sure that we protect the data privacy, data security, the data safety. So the safe havens provide this detailed governance framework, and they determine the data that will be curated and shared for research. They apply tools to make sure that data is properly anonymized, so that at the point of access, the names are stripped out, the dates are jittered, the KI numbers are scrambled in a special way. I don't want to get into the technical detail for the moment, but trust me,
Sure.
that's all secure. And then our researchers, our commercial researchers, our academic researchers, there's no exceptions, Ross, not even for Regis professors, I might add. You have to log securely into the appropriate research,
Thanks.
trusted research environment. And then you bring the algorithm and the development environment to the data. So that's the really important part. You don't bring the data to the development environment, you bring the development environment and the algorithm to the data. And there you train your model, you run your verification and your validation tests. And they are allowed to take the results out only after careful review to the satisfaction of the Safe Haven data manager. So it has to be in lockstep with the governance that the Safe Haven networks are providing. And that, of course, that anonymized patient data, that's never allowed to leave the building. Think of it as Hotel California for your patient data.
So trying to remember the lyrics. So basically, so the oil never leaves the vault, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. So
is that a metaphor?
Yeah. Maybe we'll change the outgoing music. No, we can't do that for copyright's sake. But yeah. So
oh, I like that.
So the Scottish government, they're pushing hard to really try and speed up this process. So recently they've launched the Researcher Access Service through RDS to try and speed this up and not obviously obfuscate the governance, but help to try to manage the red tape. And they've also set up a pilot program, specially funded for targeting Scottish SMEs to use public sector data to build these new AI products. It's really exciting.
Yeah, well, but also, in 2026, the NHS needs innovation. I mean, we all know the challenges that they're facing right now, both in terms of treating people properly and also in cost, right? They need innovation.
Yep. Desperate for innovation. That patient benefit is also, of course, the economic benefit as well. So it's both that health and wealth agenda. So that innovation, not just improving our health as a nation, but also contributing to our wealth as well. And in June 2025, the Scottish Parliament passed amendments to the Care Reform Bill to create an integrated digital patient record. And it's all moving towards this digital front door, an app for patients. But the core commercial debate, I guess, in this year, in 2026, is the idea of sovereign national data trusts. It's our data, but it has massive draw for huge companies, biotech companies. So America Pharma companies are really interested to use this access to this data. So if our data is going to be used in this way, and US companies are going to create multi-billion-dollar drugs, for example, using Scottish NHS data, what do we get out of it? Do we get preferential access to those drugs afterwards? Is there some sort of perpetual royalty? Do we charge access fees to fund our hospitals? I think these are the big questions. And how do we round that? How do we get how does that benefit come back to the public, and what's that patient benefit?
No, absolutely. And you and I and my colleagues and I have had this conversation quite a bit. So to be clear, to help bring home, in my world, how important this is, this pipeline, these chi number and so on, this scientifically is why I'm here. So when they came and asked me if I would, leave the States and come here and science over here in Scotland, pretty much the first thing they talked about was access to this sort of data, and something I just could not get in the States. So it really is unique. And it really can help solve a lot of health problems. But as you say, if we're going to do that here, we need some tough negotiators to make sure that Scotland taxpayer sees a return on that investment. This belongs to Scotland, and it needs to help us, build a new, more independent next generation.
Yeah, precisely, Ross. I couldn't agree more. And if we look at the UK, we have 14 of the top 100 life sciences universities. We're already home to big pharma companies like AstraZeneca and GSK. We have a spectrum of successful biotech and medtech companies, big and small companies based here. But unfortunately, we're notoriously bad in the UK at really successfully turning academic research, the brilliance that's happening in our universities, into commercial success. That you really, resolving what we call the translation barrier. And actually, we should probably give some special consideration to that problem in a future podcast, Ross. We should come back to that question.
I agree.
Anyhow, I think the key thing that we're struggling with is how to commercialize. But by treating data as a sovereign asset, by charging for access, but never selling ownership, so retaining that ownership, we could help to fund the NHS of the future, just as long as that charge doesn't become burdensome tax on commercial innovation. So I think this is where this careful balance and certainly the direction and getting the testing the water and getting that right is so important from a governmental perspective.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I cannot emphasize how important this is. Obviously, oil was, a recent way for Scotland to move itself forward, but that's now shrinking. This could very well be the future of Scotland. So, hey, Scots, if you want to build, a new economy, if you want to become more independent and so on, this is that path. But Sandy, as you say, it has to be done carefully. And we have to make sure that Scotland truly benefits from this. But, we have to also be bold. Now is the moment. This advantage that we have won't last for forever. Now is that moment. The rest of the world is beginning to assemble their healthcare data. It's basically a moving thing. But right now, I think we have a key to help really improve healthcare, both in the future with new treatments, but also right now in putting money back into our healthcare system. And so this is a win-win. Sometimes you have a moment where you can make the pie bigger and not just have to divide it in different ways. This can very much be that if we do it right.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a great analogy, and it really helps to make the whole problem accessible. Thinking about it this way, and thinking about data and oil and what the importance of that's been to our economy historically. But I think, Ross, it's maybe time to end the heavy stuff for today.
Yeah.
Let's bring it all back down to earth. Too much discussion of hydrocarbons in the news this week for us to continue this type of conversation. It's time to close out the show and to think about a wee bit of joy.
Yeah. Nope. Wee bit of joy. That's our weekly segment where we step out of macroeconomics, science, disease, how we die, things like that, and focus on something a little more positive. So, Sandy, tell me, what has brought you a wee bit of joy this week?
Well, I've had a lot of fun this week, Ross, helping my son to set up his own startup. So it's not in biotech, it's not in medtech. It's very much he's building a website. He's selling vintage golf clothing. So it's something that he started at uni in his third year, and he's been bootstrapping that company, and he's finally sort of moving into an office that he's located nearby. And I've been helping him set up in there, and it's been super exciting. And the sort of cherry on the cake was that he was successfully awarded recognition, an award as part of Best University Entrepreneur and Startup this year. So it's fantastic.
Wow.
So yeah, he got that award this week, and it was lovely to see him get that. It was really nice.
That was so cool. Also having his dad help
Yeah,
present
he's gonna hate me talking about it this way in this podcast.
He shouldn't.
No,
he shouldn't. You're doing a little free advertising for him.
Yeah, yeah. He's learning
So that's awesome.
He's learning a ton around digital marketing, and really that's at the heart of the sort of commercial challenge that he's got, and it's fantastic to see him absorb all that.
Yeah, and I know from our conversations how super proud you are of him. So yeah, that's so cool. I'm sure I will wax on about my daughters at some point, but not this week.
But tell me, Ross, what's been great for you this week? Tell us about your wee bit of joy.
Well, Sandy, for my wee bit of joy, let's talk about tartan.
Oh yeah,
which I have to say I am wearing right now.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I'm breaking a rule. You never wear fine patterns on a podcast.
Yeah, I know. I have observed that one.
Yeah. I usually do. But because they tend to moire, things like that. Think about all this stuff. Anyway, so I've been thinking a bit about tartan as part of a Scottish identity. This tartan here, it's classic, what's called a hunter style tartan. So it's more subdued. It actually, if you could zoom in, it's got little diagonal cross stitching. Maybe I'll put a picture into the podcast and show a little bit about what I'm learning about tartan. So, Sandy, I'm sure when you think about tartan, you think about Outlander, that whole Outlander vibe.
I've never seen it.
Guys marching around. Me neither. But my mother and my sister, they love it. And because I'm in Scotland, they keep asking me about it. I'm like, I don't know anything about it. Anyway, but for me personally, tartan is basically a middle finger to the man, right? And that's what I want to talk about. So apparently back in the 18th century, after the English crushed the Scots at Culloden, those longbows, man, they made wearing tartan illegal, which I didn't realize. So, of course, the Highlanders took pride in wearing it illegally, which I loved. So basically, they used this to make sure they weren't erased, which, that's so cool. And then you fast forward to my time, my world. The first time that I think, heard the word tartan, because my world, it was plaid. But tartan was Vivienne Westwood. I remember she would tear up the clothes. She would put safety pins in it. I very much remember, Sex Pistols and Sid Vicious taking those safety pins and sticking them in himself, and all the things that I would not have thought of doing with those safety pins. And then later, because with my family, I kind of like, fashion and things like that. Alexander McQueen, he had this just amazing, I don't know if you've seen it, this insane Highland drape collection, which was just pretty amazing. So that's my wee bit for this. So tartan, it looks good on a throne. Okay, a lot of royalty absolutely love tartan, but it also looks good in a mosh pit. And for me, it kind of, I bought this shirt as soon as I signed on the dotted line to come to Scotland. The first thing I did basically was to buy a tartan shirt and decide I'm going to get more tartan. And helps me connect a little bit more with Scotland. And last thing I'll say to that, to bring it back to my family, is we've actually talked about, especially my daughters and I have talked about creating our own family tartan, which apparently you can do, and you can register it. In our case, of course, it will be black stripes on black. But I'm sure I'll bring a pattern of it soon.
Yeah,
to the podcast.
That's fantastic, Ross. I love that. I love the fact you're going to have a family tartan. I think the only place that I've seen that where tartan can really go wrong is in a carpet. And we're going off on one now, but I stayed in a hotel recently where there was a very, very vibrant sort of heavy, sort of bright Stuart, kind of classic Stuart tartan.
Sure.
On the throughout this hotel, and I joked with my wife one morning that I'm not sure if we should go to breakfast or follow the tartan carpet to the end of the road and find our wee bit of shortbread at the end.
All right, so for you Americans, I'm going to have to deconvolve that statement at several levels. What's a Stuart tartan? What's a shortbread? No worries, we'll get to all of that.
We'll cover
Sadly,
all.
I know what all that is, and all this. So that's pretty much our wrap up today for the long game. So Sandy, tell us, what do we have coming up, either next week or coming up soon?
Yeah, so next week we're going to look at the infrastructure crisis. We have the data. We've talked about that today. We have the startups. Actually, we're really, really good at creating startups in the UK. But do we actually have the physical lab space to put them in? I guess that's something of the sort of wet lab bottleneck that we've talked about, Ross.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be part of our focus of our next podcast. So I'm looking forward to speaking to you about that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, me too. So until then, stay rebellious, stay tartan, and keep playing the long game.
Thanks.
Blueprint set, no fear. Playing out the long game. The long game. Hey, the long game.